I know you're not going to believe this, but a couple months back, two fake HOA officers tried to evict my family, pulled a gun on my 82-year-old grandpa right there on our own porch. And their excuse said it was some emergency order for community safety. I'll tell you what actually got tested that day, how fast they could end up in handcuffs and how much grit a so-called frail old vet could show when his home's on the line. Yeah, that happened. But let me back up a second, because the only way any of this makes sense is if you know my grandpa and you know Betty Brown. See, my name's Cal Reynolds, and I grew up on the last real acre in Creekwood Estates, North Carolina. You know the type of place, vinyl fences, every mailbox a clone of the next, not a tree older than the homeowner's mortgages, except for the oaks on our lot. And those oaks are why this whole mess started. The president of our HOA, Betty Brown, calls them a hazard to the community. I just call her Karen, not to her face, obviously. Grandpa Jack calls her that woman. He fought in Vietnam, knows what a real hazard looks like. Trust me, Betty's not even in the top 10. It all kicked off on an average Tuesday. I walked out to grab the mail and found our mailbox absolutely crushed, smashed, so flat it looked like someone took a sledgehammer to it for fun. Mail scattered everywhere, VA letters torn up and thrown in the ditch. I saw tire tracks deep and clean, like somebody wanted to leave a calling card. That's not a random accident, not around here. You do not mess with a veteran's mail. Not unless you want to start a war. Grandpa didn't say a word. Just set his binoculars down, looked out toward the road, and gave me that look, the one that means he's thinking 3 moves ahead. People get bold when they think there are no consequences, he said, voice low and steady. He took a piece of that torn mail, shook his head. Federal offense, he muttered. And he was right. I called the postal inspector while Grandpa was already out in the yard, digging for a new mailbox post twice as thick as the old one bag of concrete on standby. 82 years old, and he's out there working the shovel like it's nothing. Postal Inspector Martinez took my report seriously. Betty's name got his attention right away, since the HOA's been harassing us for months about selling the land for some ridiculous pickleball court. Martinez told me document everything. Pictures, logs. I got off the phone and saw a black SUV rolling slow past our house. No plates, just a blank dealer frame. Driver took photos, gave me a smirk. Nice mailbox, he said. Deadpan, then drove off. My skin crawled. Grandpa never flinched, just kept digging. They want you to flinch. Don't. And right then I realized this wasn't just vandalism, it was a message. They were upping the ante. That night we put in security cameras, real ones, not those dinky doorbell types. Grandpa had stashed high-def night vision rigs for years, just in case. Turns out his just in case is my worst nightmare. And then it started 2 black SUVs parking down the street, watching the house. Sometimes they'd tail me, always 3 or 4 car lengths back, trying to rattle us to make us feel like prey in our own home. Didn't work, though. If anything, it just made Grandpa more stubborn. He started waving at them from the porch every afternoon, slow and deliberate. Drove them nuts. I logged every sighting, snapped pictures, tracked times, and license plates or lack thereof. The men were always the same 2 goons, big, thick-necked, wearing cheap polos with an eagle and gavel logo. Turns out the Creekwood Estates Compliance and Safety Board was just a name Betty made up for her own muscle. Not registered, not legal, just intimidation dressed up as authority. One night we're bolting up cameras under the porch eaves, and one of those SUVs pulls up, window rolls down, and the guy just stares. Grandpa's cool as ice, tightening a bracket, asks me for the 3/8 wrench, like nothing's happening. They're watching us, I said. He grunted. Let them. People who hide look guilty. Then he tells me about Vietnam, about watching and learning. They get lazy, he said. That's when you get them. So we watch back. Set up cameras on the porch garage, even up in the big oak out back, got the whole property line covered. All feeding to a DVR in my office, real-time access on our phones. That night, as the SUVs finally drove off, Grandpa and I sat in the kitchen, him sipping tea, me reviewing the day's footage. "We have a record now," I said. He smiled. "Good. Now go talk to Theo tomorrow." Now, Theo Neighbor is a character retired electrical engineer, ham radio nut antennas sprouting off his roof like some sci-fi contraption. Betty hates him almost as much as us, fines him every month for his eyesore antennas. But Theo's got skills networks, radios, all that. Grandpa tells me, just tell him what's going on. Don't ask for help, just let him know. Like I said, always thinking 3 moves ahead. That next night, things took a turn. I was in my office watching the cameras when suddenly everything went black. Computer lamp, digital clock, dead. At first I thought it was just a power outage, but a quick look out the window told a different story. Every house on the street was still lit up, Betty's place glowing with a million look-at-me spotlights. Just us, a black hole in the neighborhood. Breaker box checked out. Then Grandpa appears with an old kerosene lamp flickering like something from the 1800s. "Check the water," he says. Nothing. They'd cut it off at the street. Not just the power water, too. "They want us to panic," Grandpa said, face calm as ever. "They want a crisis, force us out, claim we abandoned the place. Classic dirty trick, create a problem, exploit it." He'd already filled the cooler with water that afternoon, lit extra lamps, stockpiled what we'd need. "Patterns predictable," he said, almost amused. "First property damage, then intimidation, now hostile environment. I went outside to call the utility company, and the sheriff did it from the front yard just in case they were listening. Out by the Oaks, I heard shovels caught the goons in the act, trying to bury a brick of fake drugs on our property. If we'd bailed, they'd have found it and called the cops, nailed us for dealing. It was a setup, a frame job. But they got caught on our cameras crystal clear. I called the sheriff, gave them the footage, the fake drugs, the whole story. Suddenly, what had been a quiet street turned into a crime scene, deputies everywhere, evidence bags, utility crews confirming our lines had been cut. It all pointed back to Betty's compliance board. Next morning, yellow police tape was still across the backyard, a sheriff's car at the curb. And then Betty made her move, a fake emergency abatement and removal order taped to our door, threatening immediate eviction. Looked official, but the seal was pixelated ordinance number, fake Officer Markham, a made-up name in Betty's handwriting. Grandpa called it a gift, a felony on paper. We sent copies to Martinez, the sheriff, and the state attorney general's office. The case was building mail fraud, utility tampering, attempted framing, forgery. That afternoon, the abatement team showed up 2 white vans, the same goons, and a weaselly guy with a clipboard pretending to be Officer Markham. Grandpa rocked on the porch while I hit record on my phone and the cameras. Markham tried to bluster, but we called his bluff, told him he wasn't a real officer. The order was forged. He was committing a felony. That's when one of the muscle-bound goons put his hand on his gun, trying to scare us. Grandpa stood up, hands behind his back. What the goon didn't see was the old Colt 1911 tucked in his waistband. Son, Grandpa said, calm but deadly serious. "You pull that weapon. I will consider it a threat to my life and my grandson's. You won't like what happens next." For a second, nobody breathed. And then sirens, real ones, came screaming up the street. Theo's voice boomed out from a hidden speaker, announcing a live broadcast of the standoff to the whole neighborhood, and thanks to his ham radio, half the county. The goons froze. Neighbors poured out onto their lawns, phones in hand, watching the drama unfold both in real life and on the stream. The isolation was gone. By the time the deputies arrived, the tough guys gave up. Donnie, the goon with the gun, put his weapon down, hands in the air. 4 of them cuffed right there, the whole thing on camera. Inspector Martinez showed up, took evidence, found more fake orders and a list of other homes they'd targeted. Turns out Betty had been paying her private army with HOA funds, 50 grand of neighbors' dues, gone to intimidation, uniforms, even weapons. Brenda, the HOA treasurer, finally snapped, brought the real books, blew the whistle on Betty's whole operation. "Chess, not checkers," Grandpa said with a grin. And he was right. The story went from a neighborhood feud to an organized crime investigation overnight. Attorney General's office rolled up warrants in hand, stormed Betty's house, dragged her out in pajamas, face twisted in hate. You ruined everything, she shrieked at us. But nobody gloated, just relief, quiet, stunned relief as the spell broke and Betty's reign finally ended. In the weeks that followed, the HOA was dissolved. Betty and her goons faced charges from fraud to racketeering, and the neighbors started talking again. Mr. Henderson put up the white fence he'd always wanted. Theo's antennas stayed up now with neighborhood blessing. For the first time in years, kids played outside, folks brought pie to the porch, and Grandpa, well, he just sat there cleaning his binoculars, looking at the old oaks, smiling that quiet, satisfied smile. And me, I learned sometimes the line between law and revenge blurs, but you always know right from wrong. Protect your home, stand up to bullies, and trust the power of a stubborn old man and a well-placed camera. So what would you have done? Stand your ground or run? Let me know below, because sometimes justice needs a little help from all of us. Drop your thoughts, your stories. Let's talk about what real community means.